I'm sure nobody ever saw The Apprentice. That was our big hit. But I'm going to look at that guy and I'm going to say, Joe Biden, you're the worst ever. Joe Biden, you're fired. Get out of here. You're fired.
I have to admit, none of this is playing out as I thought it would. Trump is now leading in almost all the swing states, but behind those numbers lie even more troubling details.
Look, these Sunbelt battleground states, frankly, for the Joe Biden campaign, these numbers are an absolute disaster. The smallest lead is in Arizona for Donald Trump. He's up 6. Look at this, 9 in Georgia, 13 in Nevada. My goodness gracious, my God. That is a huge lead. No Democrat has lost that state since John Kerry lost it back in 2004.
What does this say about where the race stands right now? We're talking Electoral College and the race to 270.
Yeah, the race to 270. It's advantage Donald Trump.
All right, folks. So we're seeing an interesting trend from the clowns at CNN lately, where a lot of them are starting to be, I don't know, maybe a little bit honest with themselves, and they're admitting publicly on air that they think Joe Biden is going to lose, and in a way sounding the alarm to their liberal audience that, hey guys, we might be screwed in this election. And frankly, folks, I have no idea what the real motive is for why they are doing this, because I'm sure a lot of us are going to speculate, hey, are they trying to maybe just be a little bit fair and objective for once because they don't want to look completely stupid and be discredited when Trump wins in November? Maybe that's an explanation. Maybe they're trying to appeal a little more to the center because they realize after years of Trump hating, even their left-wing audience is getting tired of it, and so they're trying to change the brand. I have absolutely no idea, but I just want to react to all of it here today and maybe laugh a little bit at the cope of some of these CNN analysts, but to a degree, for once, because I know it's shocking I would do this to CNN, but maybe give them a little bit of credit, because I think some of the things they are saying here are kind of true. Now, why are they saying them? What is their motive? Again, I really have no idea, so I'm not saying that is good, but just want to react to it here today. Okay, so we got a clip over the weekend of CNN's Fareed Zakaria, and that's the first time I've even heard his name. I just know the guy's face, and, you know, he's pretty annoying historically on the airwaves, but here's what he said, right? He says he doesn't see a path for a Joe Biden victory in 2024 as of now, and says that Democrats need to be, quote, honest about reality. Pretty shocking, especially coming from that guy if you've ever seen him talk, right? Let's take a look at this segment.
I have to admit, none of this is playing out as I thought it would. Trump is now leading in almost all the swing states, but behind those numbers lie even more troubling details. As someone worried about the prospects of a second Trump term, I think it's best to be honest about reality. I understand that polls are not always accurate, but in general, they have tended to underestimate Donald Trump's support, not overestimate it. I doubt that there are many shy Biden voters in the country. The economy has been in a robust recovery for more than 2 years now, with unemployment hitting a 54-year low in 2023 and increasing only slightly since then. But Biden is getting little credit for it. The shift here is stark. On the question of who voters trust more to deal with the economy, Trump has a 22-point lead over Biden, according to an NBC poll from January. This marks a 15-point bump for Trump compared to the same poll in 2020.
Notice for a minute still how flabbergasted he is by that. How could voters possibly think that the economy was better under Trump than under Biden? Look at the unemployment numbers. Well, I don't think many people are exactly saying the unemployment rate is bad. It's the affordability and the cost of living. It's the fact that nobody can afford to raise a family under Biden. People are struggling to pay the bills. Inflation has been completely out of control, and that's why people think back reminiscently, nostalgically, to 2019 and say, hey, the upward mobility in the United States just felt a whole lot better. And it's funny that all of these Biden surrogates can never actually admit that. Okay, they claim to be, oh, liberals are all about the working class and understanding them. But then they turn into this very elitist, condescending, talking down to the working class where they say, well, yeah, you may feel like it's impossible to raise a family and much harder than it was 5 years ago, but look at the unemployment numbers. numbers. Look at the stock market. Isn't that what you guys have always criticized conservatives for doing? But maybe that's indicative of the party switch in some regards that I think we've seen recently in terms of now a lot of the working class, historical Democrats are now Republicans, and the elite, the rich who historically were Republicans, now turning to Democrats. Okay, let's keep watching this.
Perhaps this is because inflation is a far more pervasive problem than unemployment, affecting all Americans every day.
Oh, well, there you have it. At least he admits it, right? Okay, fair enough. I take it back.
Perhaps it's because people's views on the economy now are largely derived from their broader attitudes towards the candidates. But whatever the reasons, it's a stunning reversal in the midst of a relentless stream of good economic news. On cultural issues, Biden and Democrats benefit from the opposition to the Republican Party's position on abortion. But on the other great cultural issue, immigration, Biden is 35 points behind Trump as to who would handle it better. And I do wonder whether abortion will be as large an issue in a presidential race, given that reversing Roe v. Wade threw the issue to state governments and legislatures and not the federal government.
Yeah, and I actually think that's a great point. Now, I'm not saying that abortion won't help the Democrats in this election. Of course it will. We saw that in 22. We saw that in 23, even some of these special elections this year. However, on a national scale, and considering now Roe v. Wade was overturned 2 years ago, you're going to slowly see that political benefit for the Democrats decrease in scale over time. And on a nationwide election, you may not see that show up as pertinently as maybe a certain governor's race in a swing state or a Senate race or something like that, especially considering now a lot of the American people are starting to realize, hey, this is a state's issue, and even perhaps pro-choice independents are not necessarily buying as much of the fear-mongering from Democrats about how there's going to be a national ban on abortion tomorrow, because realistically, however you feel about it, it's just not happening. And so that issue might be a little bit more off the table. It's also a good point. I actually think this guy right now, for once, is being pretty fair and honest. And, I think it's actually decent analysis right now.
Perhaps the most worrying new trend for the Democrats is that far from being the more unified party, they are now bitterly divided over the war in Gaza. Bernie Sanders has said the eruption of pro-Palestinian protests could be Biden's Vietnam, and even invoked the specter of Lyndon Johnson choosing not to run for re-election in 1968 because of the opposition to that war. The analogy is far-fetched. America then was itself sending hundreds of thousands of troops to Vietnam, with more being recruited from college campuses every week. But there's no denying that the party seems more openly divided than it has been in decades. Only 33% of Americans said they approved of Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war, which is now opposed both by people who think he is too soft and people who think he is too hard on Israel.
100% true. Another great point. Biden simply can't win on this issue because a lot of old school Democrats lean more in the Zionist direction, and they're saying, why are you betraying Israel? And then the pro-Palestine side, of course, is not going to be happy with him, even if he tries to make some public concessions to them. And I think another great point there was that Democrats are now the party that is divided. Under the Trump years, we know it's been a constant back and forth between us and the rhinos. And, you saw the stuff with McCarthy, obviously, last year, and this year Mike Johnson. Republicans, yes, over the past couple of years have been the more divided party, but now with these pro-Palestine protests, one could make the argument that going into November, Democrats now are going to be the more divided party, even considering the Republican candidate is Trump, and that's a development we also have not seen before.
Meanwhile, Republicans seem to be uniting behind Trump. Whatever opposition he faced in the primaries has largely melted away. And the trials against him keep him in the spotlight, infuriate his base, who sees him as a martyr, and even may serve to make him the object of some sympathy among people in general who believe that his prosecutors are politically motivated. This happens to be true, in my opinion. I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump. A majority of Americans are skeptical that Trump will be able to get a fair trial, according to a CNN poll. And I haven't even mentioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West and Jill Stein, all of whom would probably take votes away from Biden.
Now, that is arguably the most shocking admission from Fareed in this entire segment. Is not just that a lot of Americans do think the trial is politically motivated, but that he himself, the CNN anchor here, instead of trying to push back on that, which for a long time they've been trying to do, no, he's just a criminal, and that's why they're doing this. Finally, he just breaks down and says, yeah, it is. Sorry, guys. That's huge. And it is emblematic of a greater point, which is I think a lot of these criminal trials were going to be the Democrats' ace card against Trump, which is, hey, now that's going to destabilize his image as a candidate. Hey, especially if we can get a conviction, that's going to look really bad. And the American public, most people are going to say, well, I can't vote for a felon as the president, can I? And popular sentiment is now turning and saying, well, actually, this kind of makes me support Trump more. But this is what's important about it. Not just for the base, a lot of independents. I think that was their plan, which is, hey, all this chaos, all this drama is going to turn off independents. It's failing to do so. And so now they're in a position where even Fareed is saying, we're kind of screwed here.
But trend lines are not working in Biden's favor. He needs to do something bold and dramatic to seize the initiative on asylum policy, for example, and reverse these numbers. The one that troubles me the most is on the question of who was the more competent. Joe Biden led Donald Trump by 9 points in 2020, but Trump now leads by 16 points in January 2024. That 25-point shift.
So there you have it. All I have to say really is wow, okay? Because you guys know I'm very critical of CNN, especially that guy, Fareed. One of the worst on the network, historically. One of the most obnoxious, dislikable people. But in that segment, I'm not sure he really said anything that I strongly disagreed with in any particular area. I don't know why CNN is saying it, because these are many of the same arguments I've made in past videos where I'm trying to bring up why, guys, don't doom, don't blackpill. I actually think Trump can overcome the machine this time around and win this election, given things we didn't have on our side even back in 2020. But I don't know. Again, why are they saying it? Why is he going out here saying it? I really couldn't tell you, but it's just interesting to see. Here's what's also interesting. Today, a poll came out from the New York Times that has the political world buzzing because this may be one of Joe Biden's worst polls the entire past month. Okay, so check this out. In Nevada, Trump leads 51-38 by 13 points in Nevada. Now, keep in mind, Nevada is a state that's been trending red, but in 2020, it narrowly went to Joe Biden. In a swing state just 4 years ago, you're leading by 13, according to this poll. It may be an outlier, but still spread. We understand how that works, right? In Georgia, Trump +9, Arizona, Trump +6. Let's remember, these are all three states that in 2020, at least according to, Trump lost, okay? He's now up by more than 5 in each of these places, even Arizona. Just wow. Wow, again, is all I have to say. Now, in the Rust Belt, which he's going to have to win one of these states, even if he wins the Sun Belt states I just mentioned, Pennsylvania, Trump up by 3, Wisconsin, Trump up by 1, Michigan, Biden up by 1, and that's still pretty close, still pretty within the margin of error. That's going to come down to the wire and certainly decide the election. But once again, in our recent tradition, take a listen to how CNN actually breaks down some of this news and some of this data.
Look, these Sun Belt battleground states, frankly, for the Joe Biden campaign, these numbers are an absolute disaster. The smallest lead is in Arizona for Donald Trump. He's up 6. Look at this, 9 in Georgia, 13 in Nevada. My goodness gracious, my God. That is a huge lead. No Democrat has lost that state since John Kerry lost it back in 2004. How about these Great Lake battleground states? This is something that the Joe Biden campaign can work with. Look, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump up 3, but that's well within the margin of error. Wisconsin, Donald Trump up 1, well within the margin of error. And actually, a Joe Biden lead well within the margin of error, up a point here. This they can work with the Joe Biden campaign. This, the Donald Trump campaign, absolutely loves, and it looks like a lot of the other polling on the Sun Belt battlegrounds.
When you're looking into the numbers, why do you think Biden is doing better in the Great Lakes and Trump is doing so much better in the Sun Belt?
Yeah, the Trump coalition is changing. That's basically what's cooking here. This is at least one of the big reasons why. So this is among likely voters in all these battleground states we just spoke about. Back in 2020, 84% of the Trump campaign, the Trump coalition was white. Look where it is now. It's 78%. The non-white portion of the Trump coalition, it was 13% in 2020. Look at this now. It's 19%. So the Trump coalition is becoming more diverse. And, of course, those Sun Belt battleground states are more diverse than the Great Lake battleground states.
You're looking at the Nevadas and the Arizonas here.
Of course. If you look at Nevada, Arizona, heavy Hispanic population, Georgia, heavily African-American population, with the Michigan does have some black voters in it, but Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are heavily, heavily white.
Very interesting. Okay, add it all up.
I just love it. I love to see CNN have to cope and be forced to be kind of objective, even though I'm sure the viewers are watching like, hey, you can't say that, whatever. But yeah. Again, that is great news for Donald Trump. It's also pretty interesting news. But just to break that down for you, and I'm not also saying to be complacent, we still have to try in these states, but what the poll would suggest is that the Sun Belt is essentially locked down for Trump. It's not even really in play for Joe Biden. Now, in the real world, I'm not saying you should have that approach, but if we are simply to assume that that's how it goes, okay, so Nevada goes red, Arizona goes red, Georgia goes red, North Carolina goes red, and we don't necessarily have to sit there and worry about that. Where does that put the Electoral College for people who, are not sure about this? It would put Republicans, assuming, Maine and Nebraska and all that, at 267 electoral votes already. Okay? So why is that such bad news for Joe Biden? Obviously, that's 3 away from 270. Hey, that's really close. There's a pretty big built-in lead already for the Republicans. But again, if the margins in the Sun Belt are so locked down that Biden is going to struggle to be that competitive, then, it makes Republicans not really have to put in as many resources to, say, win Nevada, Arizona, or Georgia. And again, I'm not saying we should just not try, but this is just assuming that this data is true, right? And so then when you take a look, folks, at the Rust Belt, just think about this for a second. All you need is one of these states to win the election if you're Donald Trump. So you win Wisconsin, you win the election. You win Michigan, you win the election. Pennsylvania, you win the election. And the hard thing about it that really puts the Democrats in a bad position here is if you're the Republican, all you need is one, right? If you're a Democrat to win, given this map, you would have to take all 3 of the Rust Belt states to barely have 270 electoral votes. But again, that's assuming you got to win 3 of 3. Now, if you're Trump, all you have to do here is win 1 out of 3. And so when you really break it down in a close election, the chances just one of these states may break for Trump much better than Biden, assuming he's going to take all 3 of these states. And so, I'm not saying that obviously to make you complacent. I'm not trying to, hey, don't try. Obviously, this is still, in my opinion, going to be a very close election, but that's good news. Right? This would suggest, if we're leading in the Sun Belt already, that, hey, that might tip the balance in our favor, because we can just put all of our major resources, let's just say hypothetically, into the Rust Belt. And then, hey, all you need is one to crack in that blue wall and you have the presidency. Decent news, if I say so myself. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Why do you think CNN is out here doing this? What did you think of that data showing that at least there's more minority support now, I guess, for Trump? Because I think that's also an interesting thing to talk about, because every single election cycle with Trump, you hear the same thing, okay? You'll hear this outlandish take that, like, Trump's going to win the minority vote. Trump's going to win the black vote. We should spend the whole campaign appealing to that. I don't think that's true. But, at the same time, there's another crowd that says, well, Republicans are never going to win any share of the minority vote. We shouldn't even try for it. It's only a white party. And I understand the logic, because when you look at that statistically, that's true. Vast majority of Republicans are white, but also the country is changing demographically. So as you saw there, even if you can make some small inroads, especially in, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, with a minority vote, all it takes is a couple points, and that drastically switches it. But at the same time, I'd say, well, you also can't forget that in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, Trump still needs a certain share of the white working class vote. It's a balancing act. Let me know, though. Be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, Alpha Moves Only, God bless. Have a very great rest of your day, and peace.